I'll just have a cup of coffee.
Beer it is.
No, I said coffee.
Beer.
Coffee.
B-ear.
C-O.
B-E.
What? No. No. What? No. What? You went into the attic? I'm very disappointed and terrified. Why don't you bring this potato? It's pretty big.
Mom, you're always trying to give me potatoes. What is it with you?
I just think they're neat. Why do birds suddenly appear over there, over here? 8 spices. Some must be doubles. Oregano. What the hell? Oh no, not Lenny. Not Lenny. Kids, turn off the TV. I have some bad news about Lenny.
Not Lenny!
Live from the epicenter of independent cinema, it's Film Stuffs with your host, Jake S. Weisman. Tonight's guest, screenwriter Matt Gossen. With me, the original Battle for the Planet of the Apes, Jack Quint. Let's start the show!
Welcome, film dorks. Thanks for joining us on the show with Jake S. Weisman here, broadcasting from the epicenter of independent cinema. What's in the news today? Quentin Tarantino bought another movie theater. Is this the beginning of the new movie theater experience that we keep talking about, just on a much, much smaller scale? It's not Jeff Bezos buying AMC chain. It's Quentin Tarantino buying another house. There's things to talk about. Also, Black Widow opens tonight. Our usual... there are people that usually watch the show that aren't here, even though they're commenting right now, because they're about to go watch Black Widow tonight. Oh, not Lenny. Jack. Oh, Jack.
Here I am.
Nice to see you, buddy.
Yes, I apologize for missing the beat and putting you into the show. I was very distracted by Luke's comment. Not Lenny. It's like, Luke's commenting, I have to read. Jake has to wait.
He was privately messaging me over here, over there. We only have an hour today, so let's dive into it.
Let's get into it. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Go to jellyrollchicago.com. Make sure that you are watching us on YouTube, where you can see us in the highest quality. But please be sure to subscribe to us on Facebook, when you can see when we do the updates, who our fantastic guests are coming up, and of course, on Twitch as well. And if you want to help the program, you can Venmo us at Jelly Roll Chicago.
Oof. Jack, you're such a professional. Oh my God, you're on fire.
On it.
Oh, there's nothing that I appreciate more than just being on your professional steez. Also, I think it would be... Oh, sorry?
Well, there's just one more thing I have to say, and that is a note to all my fellow roller skaters and Katie Grotzinger. Do not get those donut wheels, because if you try to stop, you're just going to flatten your tire, and this wheel is... No, don't get it.
They're for vanity only, huh?
Vanity only, wheels. Yeah. It's cosmetic. It is fashion, not function. If you need to stop, and sooner or later you will, do not get these wheels that are shaped like Homer Simpson donuts.
Well, I didn't think the last episode was a cliffhanger, but apparently it was, and this is part 2. Thank you for that. Who would have thought? Also, we need to mention there's a severe lack of something on the frame right now. Jack's mustache. Where is it?
Oh, that is gone.
Is it ever coming back?
Oh, speaking of cliffhangers.
Okay, well, we'll leave it at that, okay? Can I tell you about Matt Gossen?
I would love to hear this.
I've known Matt Gossen since 2008, so it's actually longer than I thought it was.
That's a deep cut.
It's pretty deep. You know, there are some people that you meet in your life where you're like, I better hold on to this guy. And Matt was definitely one of those cats. There's so much to say about him as an independent filmmaker right now. He's genuinely getting paid to write scripts in Los Angeles, which is an insane thing. We live in
dynamite.
I mean, that's all you can really ask for. He writes for Talking Tom and Friends. He writes for Clash of Clans. We're going to talk to him about what these cartoons even mean, like in the grand scheme of things. Existentially, Matt, what does Clash of Clans mean?
What is the Clash, and what are the clans, and why?
What are we doing here? This guy has worked with Simon Baker, Chris Redd, Tom Kenny, Tress MacNeille. He's worked with a slew of Simpsons writers. I cannot wait to talk to my good friend, Matt Gossen. Will you join us in a little bit, Jack?
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Please get the ball rolling about the conversation on animation, and I will see you on the other side.
See you, Jack. Thank you. Matt. Oh, Matt.
Hello.
Welcome.
I'm a deep cut.
Deep cut Matt Gossen. You're about to be about as mainstream as it gets, pal. I'm like sitting over here being like, I have an independent film show and you're about to be too big. You're about to big time me.
That's impossible. I am happy to come over anytime, especially as I, eventually fade into even more obscurity, which seems inevitable.
No, I think we're about to see you be the next, what's his name? Ryan Murphy. You're going to be old Ryan Murphy. You're going to be like creating these shows. You're going to be throwing them out. So let's get everybody
stressful.
Like, please just let me be a staff writer. I'm really good at that. Well, let's show this clip from Clash of Clans and we'll dive right in, shall we?
Sure.
Dad, I've let you down. Why did I frame that last one? I tell you, Pop, times are tough. Times
tough? Well, you bet they are. But your business doesn't have to suffer.
Huh?
I'm Valerie the Valkyrie, famous developer of the Clash Acres subdivision and first investor in the Sparky. I'll be speaking at the Clash Business Conference tomorrow. Want to upgrade your business? Then be there.
Maybe I will be there. Ooh, look! She's got her signature axe! Whoa, she did it! She slashed something!
You know, when I was just starting out, I learned that there are 3 secrets to running a successful business. And those 3 secrets are available to you by signing up for my legendary package. I also offer the epic package, which will get you 2 of the secrets, and the rare, which will get you 1 of them.
Oh. Yeah.
So this might be an incredibly specific place to start. First of all, you wrote this episode. You and your writing partner wrote this episode?
Yes, yeah. Me and my my credit where credit is due. My writing partner Jamie Woodham. We co-wrote a lot of these episodes, and our process was usually pretty much just splitting the script in half and each taking a half. So I chose a clip from my half to not take credit for all of his good jokes.
Well done.
But yeah, it was a really fun show to write for. It's a very oddly specific type of show because it's based off of the app Clash of Clans, which is a game. So writing on it required playing hours and hours of the game to be able to understand all the nerdy inside jokes and things like that. Yeah.
There's definitely some of that in the episodes. You can see, like, you don't play the game, and that's something that I don't usually see. And that is the specific place I wanted to start, which is this is kind of our generation's version of like He-Man or G.I. Joe, the cartoon, where like we're making this cartoon as entertainment, but the cartoon is to sell the app, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've written on it. We can talk more about it later, but I wrote on another show that was the same thing, which is there's these web apps that have millions or billions of users. And so these companies assume they have a built-in audience, and they're correct. And so the shows and the apps kind of help each other out. The show advertises the apps because after every episode, you can say, click here to play or click here to download, and then the apps refer you to the show. And position as writers on these shows is strictly from a creative place. So we're not, business people.
Right.
And we have no, it's not our, Hawk and Apps is not our game, I guess. But so we just kind of just took it, took it as a series that had nothing to do with the apps and just tried to tell the best stories or the funniest stories we could with them. And, but Clash-O-Rama, the one based on Clash of Clans, was specifically funny because we would get directives and get notes that were like, in that clip you showed, they said I think they said the epic package, the gold package or whatever. Those are references to the tiers they have when you can buy in-game content. You know what I mean? So, some avid Clash of Clans player would probably get a good laugh out of that, and a lot of audience members perhaps would have no idea that that's even a joke.
Well, and so, I don't want to misrepresent this to our audience. These episodes at least have 22 million views, at most have 100 million views. These are cartoons that are watched all over the world. They are rather popular. This isn't just some schmucky thing. So I guess is that all there is to the balance of creative and making sure that this fits in with whatever it is they're trying to do with their app?
Absolutely not. There's so much more. To the point of for example, I think I can talk about this now because I don't believe this guy still runs the company, but on one of the shows I worked for called Talking Tom and Friends, the owner of the company was vegan, and so our characters could not eat meat. And that presents an enormous, it seems like a really easy thing to avoid, but I had a whole episode that was in its second draft where a character comes up with a new dish called the taco spaghetti burger, just a play on these ridiculous, gross, foods you see on Instagram and stuff. And the note was but is it a veggie burger? Can we really clarify that it's not a meat burger? And
how'd you do that?
They made it green.
So they did it in animation. You didn't even worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. I think these things were kind of funny to us because it was no, the characters don't say, and specifically the burger is beef, as are the taco part, and there's meatballs of real meat in the spaghetti. So I think it was just kind of a general paranoia that they were going to be on brand with their company's policy. But, as writers, and not to sound entitled or whatever, but those things are a lot more frustrating than you would think because, when you can't have a character eat a hot dog anymore, again, it sounds stupid, but it's very limiting. Even ice cream, you know what I mean? Which is technically an animal product. It had to be frozen yogurt and stuff like that. So
full vegan. It had to be full vegan, not just vegetarian.
Yes. But then the company was acquired by a different company, and that rule went out the window, and our characters returned to their carnivorous roots.
That's insane. You were so kind. You let me come and hang out in the writer's room when I came to visit you once for Talking Tom, and you let me spend the day in there. And I think, I learned a lot, and it was very, very cool, and it was way cooler than anything I could have a hard time describing. But what I learned about was real estate in these scripts.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Yes. And I want to make sure, because you were breaking up a little bit. You said the real estate in the scripts, right?
Yeah, I learned a lot about real estate and what that actually means to screenwriting, and I wanted you to teach us. Yeah.
I honestly think that is one of the biggest lessons, or at least one of the biggest reasons I developed as a screenwriter. It sounds like a dumb thing, but when you are forced to write a story in no more than 12 pages. And that was our cutoff by the time we were really rolling with Talking Tom. 12 pages, no more, because animation, every minute costs thousands and thousands of dollars. It ripples through the pipeline in crazy, crazy ways. So they really cut us off and said, you can't be more than 12 minutes. So, and the reason they did that is because we kept complaining about all our jokes getting cut. And so they're like, well, here's the compromise. Just write less jokes and then we will not have to cut them. And we were like, well, I guess that's a solution.
It is a solution.
Yeah, exactly. So there is a vast, vast graveyard of jokes that were probably less good than we all thought they were, because we would cry over every cut, but that's neither here nor there. But yes, I think what that does is, 12 pages for a whole episode. That means if your scene is running over a page, you're kind of like pushing it, right? So, your cold open is a page at most. You're kind of got to break into the first act by like page 3. And I think what this does is it really gives you a good sense of economy as a writer. I write other things. I write features for myself. I've been hired to write other animated features and longer form television. I'm developing an hour-long TV show at the moment. And having that kind of skill to look at a scene and go like, all right, well, I see a lot of fat here, and it's not fat that I maybe would have seen prior to having this like very, hard directive on, these 11-minute animated shows. Mm-hmm. But what that does is it usually it distills it down to the best stuff, right? And it's fun sometimes to have your characters go off on a tangent where they're joking around, or they're like, just all that good like Tarantino-y stuff, which is a lot of fun. But once you boil it all down to your necessity, then you can just kind of say like, all right, well, how many more pages do I have to fill, and then find out the best ways to fatten those areas up, Sure. Opposed to, an issue I had probably before I wrote in a lot of these shows, which is I'd end up with these like long bloated scripts. I just go, well, I couldn't possibly imagine where I would pull out of it, cut this down, like every morsel is, crucial to the structural integrity of the story, which is nonsense. And I think any screenwriter, like, I don't like to make like absolute statements about the craft, because, that's just silly. And that's why, the idea of teaching screenwriting is kind of inherently, futile. But like, but I will say,
shots fired by Matt Gossen.
What I will say though is that I think if a writer, and I'm not patting myself on the back, but I think the best writers I would think can be really honest with themselves about what they need to tell the story and what they don't. And it's hard to do. I mean, like, I would sit and agonize over a single joke, and then ultimately you just got to go like, is this a load bearing joke, or is this just, an ornament? And ideally, with those episodes, every joke is also telling a little story. Mm-hmm. And it's a really good challenge, and it really sharpens your skills, I think.
I remember you talking about things needing to be very extreme on Talking Tom.
Extreme.
Did you ever figure out, like, did you crack the extreme code?
You're talking about our directive to extremize, which
please tell us.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so I will tiptoe around some landmines here, as not to disparage any of my former producers, but
no intention of disparaging. I just remember the extremizing very clearly.
Yes, I think the day you visited our writers' room was a very extremized centric day. So we had a producer who, and I'm not saying this to like make fun of the language barrier. He was Eastern European, and so he would kind of come up with these like amazing non-word words to like kind of emphasize what he wanted. Extremize being one of them, which is to extremize the scene, and moving pixels. Every scene has to have moving pixels.
What does that mean?
Pixels, Jake, are the little tiles that form an image. But yeah, just like everything had to be constantly going. And like we would get these, like, the crazy thing about your show being on YouTube is YouTube has this I'm sure all the streaming things have this, but I think like he really utilized this was that YouTube has all these, you know, analytical tools to kind of say like, all right, well, at 3 minutes, people are shutting off, or at like this time, like,
that's interesting.
You know, so you could basically track with a graph the attention spans of the children watching our show, right? So we would get these directives of like 3 minutes is a big dip in the graph. So you guys really got to do lots of moving pixels, extremize that scene. You know what I mean? Like really do something. And that can mean anything from like they're on a skateboard and their helmet's on fire, or something, like just things that are like kind of wacky. And so
like a pie eating contest.
Pie eating contest. We've definitely done a pie eating contest, probably multiple times. And one was a cake eating contest, so it wasn't totally hack. But no, I mean, we would just kind of
sorry.
We would do whatever we could to just like do that without it being like a nonsensical like shark jumping thing. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So, you know, our head writer, it was Tom Martin for a while, brilliant, and Kevin Peterson for a while, brilliant. They kind of would crack the code and like figure out like ways that we would tick these boxes without like torpedoing our story, right? And sometimes they were just as simple as like, all right, this scene is the exact same scene, but instead of sitting on the couch, they're throwing a frisbee around, you know what I mean? Or they're on their bikes. So that way you're seeing a lot of like background and like maybe there's a paper boy throwing something, you know, and it's like not doing anything else. But I imagine since, you know, attention spans these days when content viewing are so short, motion, you know what I mean? Just keeping the frame.
And they got it to work? Like did the dip end, or was there always going to be that dip? I'm
not sure. So here's the thing. If it did work, they would never tell us because they would, I mean, I will say we seem to kind of stop getting that note. And, you know, there was also a lot of like turnover and like, you know, management throughout the years. So like, I'm not sure if like these were kind of directives coming from different places, but I would say like, I personally suspect that a certain amount of that is just inevitable. Like whether it's the kid is watching 3 minutes, but then it's time to get on the school bus, or, you know what I mean? Or just they boot it up and they just see something, a thumbnail for like a Minecraft video, and then they click that, you know what I mean? And so I think it's a very kind of, and I don't say this to kind of like take jabs at different cultural perceptions of things, because I don't think this is inherently a negative thing, but I do think like the countries involved with making our show, which was Austria and Slovenia and, you know, these kind of more like Eastern European countries have a very like kind of structured and like analytical view toward, you know, the product. And like, it's a lot of spreadsheets and it's a lot of graphs. And I think there was kind of just a disconnect between the American writers who aren't as like rigid, and the you know, our Austrian animators and our Slovenian producers who were very much like, I need to see how this all fits into a formula, you know what I mean, or a strategy. So it was an interesting experience, but I would say most of the time we could find a way around it and just like, you know, kind of wave it off with like a juggler in the background or something. You know?
It's a shame they wouldn't share that stuff with you, because it seems like its own form of Moneyball, which I'm always obsessed with in the film industry, which is just like, you're not, you know, American writers are writing for the creative, right?
Yeah.
And to achieve whatever it is creatively and, you know, do your real estate thing. Whereas these guys are like, no, literally by minute 3, do this. By minute 5, do this.
Yeah.
You'd think that if there was more communication, you guys could really marry that, or as a writer's room, are you guys like just like fuck that?
Yeah, I mean, there were certainly moments where we were like that, where we'd get frustrated, and I'm sure there were times where we were being unreasonable or bratty because, you know, you know, our jokes. I actually like I you know, like we would have to kind of step aside and make fun of ourselves a little bit as being a little precious. But I do think there was also this kind of like weird paternal relationship between the writer's room and the producers, which was kind of the like fatherly thing of like, you know, I'm not going to congratulate you too hard, so you know, get comfortable. Not my father. My father he's still with us, thank God, is a lovely parent. But this father, this analogy is falling apart underneath me really quickly. But
you get paid to do this, right?
Oh no, they're all gonna know.
I get paid to write drafts, Jake. I don't come up with shit on the spot.
No, they're gonna find the real Matt Gossen.
So funny.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of like, you know, trying to keep us on our toes, you know, and trying to kind of keep that idea of like having to jump that hurdle alive, so that way we kept trying. Because I do think, and I'll be honest and like critical of ourselves as writers, like once you feel like you did it, you just kind of like, you're like, great, that problem's gone and I don't have to worry about that anymore. Like we were a little bit like, if we were given a little bit of rope, we would, you know, take advantage of it. So I get it. I mean, I guess that's just being a vigilant boss or something. Yeah.
You've hung out with a bunch of Simpsons writers. Is there anything you've like, any like good knowledge that they've dropped on you, or is it kind of what we've been talking about?
Yeah, honestly, so I won't like get into the super specifics because some of the projects I worked on are still like, you know, kind of in early development. I can't talk too specifically about it, but I got to work with a handful of Simpsons writers on independent projects of theirs outside of the Simpsons, as well as like I got to work with David Silverman, who's the director on The Simpsons, on another project, doing rewrites for a project he was involved in. And I think that, and you know, this is nothing that you can't find like Conan O'Brien saying on YouTube or anything, but like, it's, you know, that kind of laughocracy, you know what I mean? Like of that, you know, in the end, nobody's precious and the biggest laugh wins, but also that you should never, and this is kind of what I was talking about a little bit with the real estate thing, is it really got pounded into me getting notes from those guys, or like just being present for table reads, you know, occasionally got invited to a few of those for The Simpsons just as a guest, that like, that you never abandon story for the laugh, you know what I mean? And I think that it was really like a James Brooks thing, where he would really hammered into those guys that like, if you gotta like rip the emotional rug out from your characters to get a laugh, it's not worth it. And I think that's really valuable, because I think as a aspiring funny person, a lot of times you just like really just put your laser focus on the joke, you know what I mean? And like I gotta like have the biggest laugh. But if you just kind of, you know, I'm sure you've heard this before, but apparently there was a guy in the Cheers writers room who, no matter what, if they needed a joke, they'd be like, yeah, get in here. And they'd be like, here's a line, like, we need a joke for it. He'd pitch it. It would be an absolute uproar, like hilarious. And they'd be like, okay, go back into your closet. And like, that's just kind of what he was for, because, you know, like I have worked with writers like that, and it's not a dig at their talent, because it's a different type of talent. I mean, like that's not my strong suit. I think my strong suit is story and character. And I've certainly come up with jokes I've been proud of, but I'm not usually the guy in the room, like just immediately jumping on like the laugh that is going to like, you know, bust everybody's guts. But like, I think the reason that person isn't, you know, is kind of like less of a Swiss Army knife is because you can't just tell a good story with just a series of big laughs. And I think anybody who's a fan of The Simpsons kind of knows that through osmosis, because, you know, you ask people what their favorite episodes are, and they tend to be, you know, the ones that are the most like emotionally, you know, invested in, you know, what the character's going through. So yeah, I mean, it's great. And it's a lot of things I've heard, you know, because I mean, as a big fan of that show and shows that those people have worked on, you listen to interviews with these people and you've heard them say these things before, but I think in practice, once you actually see the scene you're working on and how that applies, you kind of go, oh yeah, like I kind of took my eye off the ball, or you know, this is a really big laugh, but it's causing more damage than it is, you know, good, or it's in the way, you know. I mean, so many times jokes are just in the way, and you know, it's hard to like be honest with yourself about that.
It's hard enough to write a joke to then have to turn around and throw 90% of them away or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. One of the writers in the Talking Tom room, Jim Hope, said anytime that happens, he opens a document, pastes that joke into the document, and in hopes that it will be used again, and then never looks at the document again. And I think that's like a really good kind of parable, because it kind of shows you that, like, you know, it could be the most important thing to you in the moment, and if it was really that important, it would resurface, and it usually doesn't.
Were there people who did? Oh, I'm sorry. Keep going.
No, please go ahead.
Were there people who did keep trying to pitch the same jokes over and over and over and over again, like week after week? Like, didn't work for this one. He's doing the pie joke again.
I have experienced that. Luckily, not really as frequently in my room. I mean, there's certainly like time, like I think everybody kind of does that, where they're like, okay, but I put a different coat of paint on it, so this time. But like, I think that the thing you're talking about is like the like relentless, and the way our room worked on Talking Tom was we had our core group of writers, and then toward the end, we had a budget to like bring in like, you know, like a freelancer, like 1 day a week or something like that, for like, you know, just a day rate. And I think the hope was that we would be able to like hire a new writer the following season if our budget went up, which it didn't. So that ended up being like kind of an exercise that didn't lead to anything. But during that time, we were bringing in like a lot of writers that, you know, our head writer knew from either like improv or like, you know, stand-ups or whatever.
Right.
And I would see a lot of that in those moments. And like, usually like, it sounds like really mean and like high school bullshit, but I do think it, like, so much of a room working is being able to arrive and just like be excited to see all your friends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and just kind of know that there's not that one person in the room who's just gonna be kind of like nails on a chalkboard. And that sounds incredibly mean. And that person could be a perfect fit in another room. You know what I mean? It's a weird kind of amorphous thing. But I think that was always a sign of like, you know, narcissism almost, is that like, they're like, no, you guys don't get it. And like, I saw Tom Martin shut this down in a way that I thought, like, it was like really kind of, he was really good at kind of being a boss in a way that was like really funny and like never made anybody really feel bad about themselves. And there was a moment where I think the line was, no, I get it, I just don't like it. And like, you know, and it was like, but which sounds like a really mean thing to say, but it was such a kind of a big warm laugh for the room that everybody could kind of just like reset and go like, okay, fair enough. And like, you know, and just kind of go like, oh yeah, like, you know, I didn't realize that I was just kind of spitting out the same thing over and over again. So, you know, I think, like I said, everybody has their tendencies and everybody has like their off days. Like there have been so many days in the room, because like I did 4 or 5 seasons on that show. And there were days in the room where 8 hours and I just didn't say a thing. You know, and it was either just because like I just didn't have it, or I didn't have anything to contribute, or, you know, but you're still absorbing, you're still being caught up on the work, you're still seeing the way the script is developing. Yeah. And I can talk more about like what the day-to-day is, but, you know, I think there's days where I'm like, I'm going to be more useful just kind of hanging out on reserve than like trying to like sweatily like get, you know, chalk marks up on the scoreboard. You know what I mean?
Right. You know that episode of The Simpsons where they go to New York and Bart goes to the Mad magazine thing?
Do I?
Right. and it just looks, it's like it's a normal office, but then it ends up being like this crazy kind of a room. That's kind of how I felt going, where it's like, and it makes sense that that's what you're talking about in terms of chemistry, because not to burst anyone's bubble about what a writer's room is, but it's a lot like school. It was a white room and a whiteboard and a TV and someone standing there and everyone sitting around for 8 hours and everyone had their notebooks out, and it was fascinating. And also, if that chemistry is wrong, I can imagine that is just the worst, like just one of the worst places to be, because it has nothing to do with what's on the walls, you know?
Right. You're absolutely right. And I think your comparison to school could not be any more, you know, poignant, because it's a school where you get to kind of like choose the students, right? So like, you know, everybody's been in the classroom with like the one person who is just anarchy every day, and it's just like actively trying to destroy everything. And and not the cool anarchy, the bad. And so, you know, you can't afford to have that person. You can't afford to have the person who thinks it's their open mic, and you know that it's about getting the high score. And you also can't afford to have, and this sounds a little less, I like it. You also can't afford to have, and this is perhaps a little bit meaner, but like the sweaty, desperate person who like thinks like they're going to be fired if like they don't, you know, get a word on the page, you know. And that, I think that's what I had to learn in the beginning, because I am an extraordinarily anxious person. I'm an extraordinarily self-deprecating person. I'm, you know, was raised an Irish Catholic, so I'm an extraordinarily guilty person.
In the middle of Illinois.
Yeah, in the middle of Illinois. And so I, you know, had the voice screaming in my head the first couple of weeks, you're going to blow it, you're going to blow it, you're going to blow it, you're going to blow it. And luckily, you know, my good friend Jamie, who was the one who invited me into that room, just kind of said like, just have fun. And like, nobody's like, you know, again, nobody's keeping score. So, and once I realized like, oh, you just kind of go into this room with people you like, you try to make each other laugh, and you just use what you love about television and what you know about writing to just try to make the thing that's on the TV as strong as possible. And, you know, everybody just has the same goal. And that's why, like, I hear about some of these rooms that are just so like dark and just kind of like, you know, just a pressure cooker. And like, I know like sometimes like you get behind in schedules, like, you know, you got to catch up or whatever, but I just don't know how anything good is made that way, you know? So I was very fortunate.
We'll have to ask you off air what writers' rooms you're talking about.
Yes, we will discuss that.
I'll tweet it, guys. Don't worry, I'll post it on Facebook.
I mean, here's what I'll say is like, I think you can just simply Google like head writers who just didn't want to go home and find like plenty of examples of that, because I do think like the second you have a head writer who'd rather be in the writer's room than like with their like significant other or with their kids, like then you are that person's solace and you are their prisoner. And that's interesting. You know, we all love what we do. And, you know, in this room particularly, everybody loved what they do and everybody loved coming to work. But at 5 o'clock, everybody's also really happy to go home.
Right.
And
it's a talking cat on an app.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of it's a talking. Like, everyone is very objective about what, like, we're making this great. We're making this great with great talent.
Right.
So
right. Exactly.
It's really interesting.
And that's I'm a firm believer that, like, you know, you don't need like a 16-hour day to make something great. Yeah. You know, that is where you start to teeter on, like, I won't go as far as to say like, you know, mental illness, but I think it's like at a certain point, like, and look, I've also had these days where I'm just like ripping my hair out and it's 2 a.m. and I'm like, what does this cat say? The kids, they need to know. Like, think of the children. And like, I can see the bags under my eyes and I'm like, you know, the cliche, like in a robe and like my fingernails are like 10 feet long and like, but like, you know, I you know, I've been there, but I do think like that's something else. And that is like, you know, as a solo writer, you need to learn to like give yourself permission to not have it that day. But as a boss, that responsibility is higher to be able to release your team instead of force them to like, you know, be these machines that just spit out funny. And I've been very lucky with my bosses, you know, for sure.
Nice. Jack, let's get Jack in here.
Oh, hello.
Jack.
Hello,
Hello.
greetings. What's burning on your forehead? What's burning your mustache off your face, Jack?
Oh, it's just.
Tell me what's on your mind.
How does
what questions do you want to ask?
What is the funniest kind of mustache?
Certainly one that curls in some way.
That is the right
Probably
answer.
upward curl. Yeah.
The Snidely Whiplash.
Matt was in my feature Scrapers, and we did do some test shots of him wearing only a mustache to see if that was a move that we wanted to do.
Forgot about
Remember
that.
we made you had a whole beard, and we were like, get rid of the beard, keep the mustache. Let's just see.
That's
I have those pictures somewhere.
It was aggressive.
There's a reason why you did not. You were clean shaven in that movie.
I think we all, like a good writer's room, everybody felt the vibe was wrong.
We had a great laugh about it.
And you said, is this joke? Is it load bearing or is it getting in the way?
Yeah,
exactly. I think Matt can do this without the mustache. I don't know.
I liked what you said about being lucky to have some of the bosses that you've had, because sometimes, you know, you and your writing friends, you can just be cracking each other up, but you're working for somebody who doesn't get it. And I was wondering if you could speak to that for a minute.
Yeah. You mean in terms of the producers, like our European producers? Yeah.
Because I don't mean recent stuff like Talking Time. I mean, like, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day. You've had to work to get to where you are now. So
yeah,
it takes a while to get to a point where it's like, I really like these people who I'm working with, and you have a lot of experience to speak about some of the other.
Absolutely. So I never considered myself like a funny person, and I still feel gross kind of referring to myself as such, because I think you grow up thinking like the funny person is the class clown, and but usually the class clown like goes to jail. So like, that's not like really what you aspire to be. So I think, once I kind of got into LA, I was trying to do these like very dark and kind of like Coen Brothers-y type of things. And I just like bored myself with it. So I joined a sketch comedy group and felt incredibly insecure, but it gave me like 5 years to just throw spaghetti at the wall and just like see, and to like jump, off the cliff and see if I'm as funny as I think I am. And I was sort of, so I, it was kind of a relief to, be able to go up there and bury yourself and be like, oh, okay. So like, I do kind of speak the language. I do kind of read the language. But that was, a bunch of those 14 funny people who weren't being paid to be funny, desperately, sweatily trying to make it their big break. So that quickly imploded.
You said it lasted 5 years, though.
I think it did last about that long.
Way longer than I remember it lasting.
And it's muscle building.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
It's really doing the workshopping stuff. It's putting in the time. It's pounding the pavement.
And real audience work.
Absolutely. And there's nothing more sobering than like, 50 people not laughing, because it's not like TV, it's not like TV, or you send somebody their script and you can kind of go like, they probably laughed at that one, like they're like, it is an instant, honest response. And when it goes well, it is like electric. And when it doesn't, it is the worst you will ever feel. And I, as a very privileged person, I'm going to double down on that. It's the worst you will ever feel. But no, I mean, but it's an awful feeling. And I honestly have like some of my greatest memories from that time, because even though there was a lot of tension, it wasn't because any of us had issues with each other. It was just like 14 people trying to squeeze through one door. Right. And it's been really interesting to see where all those people went. Some people didn't keep up with the industry. Some people are in voice acting. Some people are writers. some people are in, different fields and within
There's
the
a
industry.
few professional writers, huh? Out of that group.
Yeah. One of our guys ended up writing for Nickelodeon. One of our guys, arguably the most talented performer. I mean, I could just point him out to you in this poster as I go, but I won't hurt any feelings. But one of our guys, who is arguably the most talented performer, is now a voice actor and just did a character on the new Resident Evil game, which has been amazing for him. And
Nice.
he's also done a lot of work with. He's a voice on the new Samurai Jack show, and like he's getting a lot of great work, and well deserved. But it's cool to see where those branches all took us. But coming from that, I kind of left with like a certain level of confidence to, say, all right, I kind of like know what my Swiss Army knife is, right? Like I kind of know what I can do well, and like I can kind of see how my influences have translated and distilled into like my own voice. Like you watch that clip at the beginning and that like joke of like him seeing the newspaper saying that they're going out of business, and you're like, why did I frame that one? Like that's 100% a Simpsons joke. I mean, not literally, but it is like
very
the Simpsons influence distilling into a joke like that. Right? Yeah, exactly.
Your greatest wish was to see the world's largest bowling pin, and we did that last year.
I wish we had a picture of that.
I wish they still did that runner on that show. I missed that runner.
Person. Yeah. So, I kind of walked out with that, right? Like kind of like knowing like, all right. And so that gave me the confidence to start a Twitter account. And at the time before Trump was president, it was a much nicer place. And it was basically an open mic that never closed, opposed to a just wood chipper that you voluntarily would walk into every day. Right. And so during that time, I was just kind of like, all right, I'm going to just practice a bunch of shit. I'm just going to practice a bunch of jokes. Let's throw jokes on there. And there were bad ones and there were good ones, but there were never like bad ones, which is like why anytime somebody like has this thing where it's like, we found 10 tweets of like, and they're just like, I was young and just trying stuff out. I don't know. Like
trying out your racist material.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
On the internet.
Right. Yeah. So I will go on the record saying that those people are kind of not great. I had a lot of really bad jokes.
I dig through your Twitter feed, we will not be able to cancel you whatsoever.
I am confident. I had a lot of bad jokes, like a lot of really bad jokes, like,
just wait 10 years, man.
Like sunny side up is a chicken abortion. Like that was like a joke that I posted on Twitter.
No, we gotta say goodbye.
Good night, everyone.
Yes.
It's been a great interview.
Anyway, we gotta say
really great.
That's too piquant for this show. That's a little too.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, then maybe I stand corrected.
It's not even 10 o'clock where I am. It's still 9:48 in this time zone.
It's fucking 7:15 where you are, Matt.
I know the sunlight confused me. But so there were certainly bad, like just like bad craft, but you could kind of go, well, this one not good, this one good. You have your meter of like, what's working and what's not.
And you have those analytics as well. Like, right.
Yeah. I mean, basically like I shouldn't be so hard on our old producers. Like maybe they're on something, but, yeah. But the cool thing about Twitter is that you don't have to be famous to be famous. So like, my friend Jamie, who I mentioned, who I wrote a lot of Clash episodes with, he was somebody who just treated Twitter like a full-time job, like built his way up to like 50,000 followers, just tweeting jokes, getting retweeted by massive celebrities, like people of great fame, and like, always making those kind of like BuzzFeed, like top 10 tweets about this thing. And so he was living in Alabama at the time, because he was going to school, and he was kind of like, I'm moving to LA. I want to be in TV. I have no idea what I'm doing. We follow each other. I see that you work on a television show. And I was kind of like, you're fine. I can't offer you nothing. Because like, I was like, I had a little bit of a following, and like him and I followed each other. And there was like a few people who were comics that I were fans of that followed me. And so I had like, I don't want to say I had reach, but like, it was like not out of the realm of possibility that like I was reaching people who I would like to be working with.
Yeah.
And so he's like, well, I'm going to move here. Let's get coffee. And we got coffee, and we kind of said we should try writing something together. We have a similar sense of humor, and he is very much the type of person that just like will like pound the pavement and like try to find work. And he ended up connecting to somebody who followed him, which was Tom Martin, which is he's an ex-Simpsons writer who ended up starting Talking Tom, and Jamie ended up being his assistant for a while. And when Tom was looking for writers, Jamie recommended me. And so you can draw a line from like trying to be funny on Twitter to actually getting a seat in a writer's room,
bombing on an improv stage to
yes, let's take it back another notch. Exactly. And I do think it's just, and it's like, you know, that's why like whenever you get the question of like, how did you get to where you are? There's no one answer. And this one is like certainly not the one I would have predicted. It never feels like a path until it reveals itself to be one. Sure. But it was just like, I tried this thing. I like this thing. I think I'm not terrible at this thing. So let me try to ratchet it up another notch. Okay, I'm still doing it. I still like it. I still think I'm all right at it. And you just kind of keep, you know, following those breadcrumbs. And then eventually, you know, you're making the right people laugh and they want to be around you, you know? And like, I know I'm incredibly lucky that the things fell the way they did. I know that first day in the writer's room on Talking Tom, I met Tom Martin, and he was like, I'm from Chicago, and, you know, we like the same pizza, and, you know, things like that. And, you know, and it's just like any little like minor connection can be huge. And so it's a lot of like miracles along the way. But I do think like, and I'm certainly not successful enough to give anybody advice, but if I were, I think my advice would be, don't be precious about the path you are convinced you have to take. Like, I came to LA to be a director of like very sincere films. You know, that was like my goal, because I thought that was like the best way to create art.
You're going to be the next Chazelle or Reitman.
Yes, exactly. Those are two very good examples of what I was trying to do.
I've known you for a minute, my friend. Yes, I remember when that, like, it was for a while.
That is certainly clear. And but I think eventually you get to a point where it's just like, and this is what happened with me, where I was like, I'm going to look at all my influences, like lay them all out. Those movies are certainly there. I think film school, and Jake, I'm sure you could speak to this because we went to the same film school. Our film school really tried to tell us why the things we liked were not the things we should like in many ways, or at least that was a lot of my professors said, like, that's. But once I had 5 years of depression in Los Angeles, and I could kind of like lay all the cards on the table and be like, all right, what did I love? I loved The Simpsons. I loved Doug. I loved SpongeBob SquarePants. I loved, and like eventually you start going, a lot of these are animated cartoons for kids. And then I look at movies and I go, I love Jurassic Park. I love, you know, all these Amblin movies that, you know, there's not a lot going on there, but they're magic, you know what I mean? And they made me feel a certain way. I love Star Wars. I love all these kind of big spectacle things. And then you eventually get to a point where you're honest with yourself and you're like, all right, well, who do I think I should be versus who am I? And I know that's a very existential way to like talk about career, but
when you're a writer, though, like that's kind of or a professional artist,
exactly.
In any capacity, you know.
I think you start writing thinking that you are trying to like grab onto something in the zeitgeist, you know what I mean? Like trying to like kind of say like, well, this is what's popular, I gotta do that, or like, you know, what's the thing that nobody's done before? And eventually you just got to let that go and just kind of like write the movie that you would have loved to see as a kid. And it doesn't have to be as a kid, but like, I think that's when, for me at least, movies meant the most. Like, I think of all the movies that I would, like the VHS tapes I would wear out on my sick days, you know what I mean? It was always like the same 3 tapes. And like, what about those movies like just broke my heart, you know what I mean? And I think, you know, it's a lesson I keep learning over and over again. And you know, eventually when I just kind of told myself I don't want to really direct anymore, because the truth is I don't really like being on set. I find it exhausting, and my anxiety, my aforementioned anxiety does not handle it well. So I think, you know, even in this last year during the pandemic, I was just like, and Jake, you kindly read the script. I just wanted to write something that felt like a movie I would have watched on a very long sick day, which is what it felt like I was experiencing, like a year-long sick day. And like, so I wrote this big adventure movie about a girl searching for a Sasquatch with an imaginary friend. And
I'll go on record as saying it's a beautiful script. It's one of my favorite scripts that one of my friends has written. I'm not just saying that to blow smoke. I actually really, I ate that script right up. We talked about it for a long time. I like that script.
That's very kind. But it is something that I probably would have been critical of as a younger person, to say like, but what's it doing, and look, I'm especially now, I think it's really important to like try to strive to make socially aware and socially relevant material and like really challenge people to think differently. But I think the biggest misconception about kids and family content is that it can't do that. And I think that's why there's so much bad kids and family content. Mm-hmm. And it's why people say things when they see Pixar movies that make them cry. Like, I can't believe this family movie. Like, I can't believe I walked out of this feeling this way. And it's just like why not? And I do think, you're not going to be able to tell the same, like, you're not gonna be able to tell the stories as literally as you would and perhaps like a more adult driven content. But I think that kind of capitulation of like kids stuff or family stuff can't do that is nonsense. And right. As a straight white male from a very privileged upbringing, I am trying to navigate my way of telling stories that are helpful and not harmful, at the same time staying out of the way of people whose voices should really be elevated. That, the balance I have found is, these stories that can substitute these social issues for something more tangible and more digestible for kids. Sure. There's no more literal way to tell a story of like otherness than, a kid, befriending a monster. Kind of having to, I think of like The Iron Giant, for example, was such a huge movie for me because it just very clearly showed the dangers of like fearing the unknown and like overreacting and ignorance to, but it's a kid and a robot. And,
right. And it's a kid
robot.
Movie
it's Vin Diesel.
That's right. It is Vin Diesel.
And we're also 10 years old sobbing at the end of the movie.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So I think, I write other things too that aren't family or child, oriented. And I think that's, I certainly have aspirations to color outside those lines, but I think I have found a lot of joy in sitting in that genre and trying to squeeze every drop out of it when I can.
Well, I have the penultimate question, and then we'll ask the ultimate question.
Oh, please.
Our second to last question. While tiptoeing around some dangerous landmines,
yes,
tell us what the future of Matt Gossen is.
Sure.
What legally can you tell us? Because it's big stuff. Big stuff.
I hate, the NDA landmine, but it is a very true thing, and I don't want to be sued into oblivion. But
not for this show. Not for this show.
No, please. You shouldn't.
Get sued for Carson or somebody bigger.
Well, broadly,
Johnny,
I'm developing. Yeah. That's he's not
Merv Griffin or something. Damn. The Michael Douglas show or something.
Hey, you'll get sued by Jack Parr. He'll have something to say about this.
Listen, don't cross Dick Cavett. He will fuck you up.
They can bring it on.
For Dick Cavett, I will spit it all. Let me tell
you. This is excellent. I'm just imagining all these zombie talk show hosts now.
It's what we need. It's not enough like talk show hosts. We need the zombies to come back.
I want to see the zombie Joan Rivers come back.
Please. I love it. Man, sold. Okay, what am
Yes, Matt.
Hey-o. So I'm just imagining Bart as a baby repeating that.
Just watch that episode.
So good. So I, years ago at this point, because animation takes the longest time, I did some rewrites on an animated film that's supposed to be coming out soon.
Wow.
Feature? It's a feature. I'm sure I can talk about it because there's a trailer and everything. It's a film called Extinct, and I will not even come close to claiming the story as my own. I was very luckily asked with Jamie to kind of come in and punch some things up and kind of be an in-house writer to field some of the director's notes because the writers of the script are extraordinarily busy. So when they couldn't take these rewrites, I got to be able to, take a crack at it. So that's coming out soon, I believe.
Wow.
I have another animated film in development. I can't really talk much about it. I hope it makes it through the light of day. COVID really complicated the process for that, but it's a script I'm really proud of, and it's still chugging along, and so I'm really hopeful about that one because I think it's one of the better things I've worked on. And I'm developing a series at the moment too, and that's the thing I can talk the least about. But this is good television.
But producing a god honest television series.
Oh no! I promise it'll be there. Look for it.
It airs in Canada.
I got a TV show in Canada. So.
Yeah, see, Jake, there's a joke about when you didn't have a girlfriend, you would say you had a girlfriend, but she lived in Canada.
That's why I don't date Canadian girls.
So that way you couldn't be caught in a lie because nobody's going to go looking for this person.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's a show that I'm producing, and I'm very excited about it. And it's been an interesting experience to kind of do something a little different than what I'm used to. But I will come back on when I can talk about that stuff.
Please
sure.
come back on.
Great.
We would desperately. We want you to come back for a long one because this is.
Yes, I feel like you're absolutely right. I feel like we've been talking for like 5 minutes, and I can't wait to do this again. This was so much fun.
Wonderful. Well, you're so sweet, Mike Gossen. You're one of my favorite.
No, you.
Bah.
You're both the sweetest. So sweet you give each other cavities.
Yes. Very saccharine. That's why people tune into this show for
we're all just a bunch
coverage.
We're just a bunch of old friars, just some talk show hosts who were born sometime between 1885 and 1920.
That's pretty funny. Ruth Buzzy. We're talking
Jimmy
Billy
Durante.
Crystal, a young Billy Crystal, Jimmy Durante.
I love it. I see it.
I'm there. I'm there. And Dean Martin can't spit any words out. He just can't form a sentence.
He can't even open his eyes.
But he's having a great time
With
Rickles and the gang. All right, Jack, you want to ask our ultimate question?
Yes,
Matt,
talk it to me.
What are you watching?
I am watching all the obvious things. I'm watching Loki. I'm watching Hacks. I'm watching.
People love Hacks. Holy shit! People love Hacks.
I haven't gotten there yet.
I honestly, I don't know what's not to love. I mean, it's just like I generally get sick to my stomach watching stuff about what I do because it just is a reflection of the often nightmare of side of what I do. But I think I just am kind of, I don't know what it is. I'm just in on that one. And then I just started Physical with Rose Byrne and starring Rose Byrne and one of my favorite comedians, Rory Scovel.
Yeah, he's got a big old role in that.
Yeah,
he's like blowing up this guy. Yeah,
he was kind of one of those guys that I like kind of clung to as my own little secret, and now he's doing all kinds of stuff. But I
see that in your face. I see that reaction of that Columbia hipster that we all were.
I know mine.
I knew about him first. I'm glad
nobody's gonna
Glad you like them.
Nobody's gonna know about Juno. That's my movie. Nobody will ever see
Juno
that.
was your movie, dude. I remember.
It'll never. Only I will know about it.
And they'll all
I would
thank you to me for telling them about it.
Exactly. There were certainly a lot more people in the theater the third time I saw it. No.
After you told everyone twice.
Yeah. But physical is a good. I would certainly recommend that because I think it's the directing in it is really really special. And it's filling my 80s void that was left when Glow was canceled.
That's what it seems to be doing, right?
Yeah, but it's different. It's very different, and it's very tonally, more hardcore. So that's what I'm watching. I'm not watching a lot of movies right now. I think it's because I'm working on a TV show and trying to kind of stay in that headspace. So
that's fair.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Jack, what you watching, Jack?
I was watching a very serious program about a talking cat and a talking dog, and it is Talking Tom and Friends.
Hundreds of episodes on YouTube just waiting for you to continue that journey.
Are there still hundreds of episodes unproduced?
No, honestly, no, I think because it's as far as I'm concerned, I think it's wrapped up because it's been a long time, and I think I think also the pandemic kind of made them reassess things. But I think there's if it hasn't aired its finale yet, it should be soon. So they're winding down. I think my last episode that I wrote aired a couple weeks ago, and I ended up doing 20 episodes for that, but obviously in a writer's room, you contribute to hundreds. But yeah, that was quite a journey, and it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed writing that show, and the cast was. I mean, we didn't talk about the cast, but it was Colin Hanks, Lisa Schwartz, James Adomian, Tom Kenny, Maria Bamford.
So hold on, I want to talk about that because you have Hanks playing Tom. And you have Tom playing Hank.
Oh,
that's right. That's right.
Well
and
done,
that observation was made by somebody on the show, and they were like, you know what? I'm going to tell Colin Hanks this. He'll think that's really funny. And then very quickly they went, he probably doesn't want somebody to talk about his dad.
But it's his name too.
Yeah, exactly.
The other character is he's Tom the cat, but then there's the character
Hank the dog,
but voiced by Tom, right?
Tom Kenny. Yeah. It's honestly, my mind is melting as you're saying this.
Wait, has nobody ever said? Are you serious?
No, that observation has been made.
Of course,
and,
I was. Okay, all right. You had me for a minute. I'm like, shame.
Yeah.
I'm very.
It wasn't
gullible.
intentional. It's just one of those amazing little miracles of a coincidence. Yeah. But no, that cast was incredible, and honestly, that being my first real writing job, being able to sit and I got to go to the studio a lot and hear those cast members say things I wrote, is the coolest thing ever.
You party with Tom Kenny, dude. Don't you party with Tom Kenny?
I don't know that I would say I party with him, but I've been at parties where he has been there and he says hi.
Don't you go see him perform and stuff like that?
I have, yeah, actually. He's the most lovely guy. He's like the coolest guy and the sweetest guy. And because I work in animation and he works on literally every animated project that has ever existed, I've run into him at rap parties, and he always says hello, and he's always incredibly kind. And he has an awesome band called Tom Kenny and the High Seas, and I've seen him perform a few times, and it's an absolute riot. If anybody's ever in LA and they're performing, you gotta go.
I hope they can hit that high C.
You see, right? It's a pun. It's like the high C's, but it's spelled S-E-A. And but no, I mean that's an all-timer for me because I was a huge fan of his work before I knew I was a fan of his work. You know what I mean? He's like one of those people who's a voice that's been in your head for years and years, and most of the time you don't even know it. you just go over to his IMDb page and prepare to scroll for an hour.
Oh, yeah.
And I think even more so when you meet these people and they're just the loveliest. I the same thing about everybody in the cast, and like, you know, especially Maria Bamford. I'm not elevating her over anybody else in the cast, but she was there a lot because she was, you know, one of the main characters. Just the sweetest person ever. And it just goes to show you that, like, there's no reason to be, nothing to gain by being a dick. And now, you know, me saying nice things about these people doesn't, you know, bring them any more fortune, but like those vibes like affect so many people, and like especially young creatives who like kind of, you know, you never know what job's going to be your last job. To be able to kind of like point at that and go like, wow, that was a really magical experience is, I hope they realize how important it is to people like me when they're really lovely. So
That's wonderful.
Nice.
I like that.
yeah.
I like that.
You seem like a really great guy to work with.
Let me tell you. He is. He's the best.
I like to hope so.
it.
You
He's
can
the
have
greatest.
Jamie. You can have Jamie on, and then he can just talk about my ripping my hair out and pacing in the living room, being like, "They would never say that."
You know what? I'll have you back on. We'll talk about that.
Perfect. Yeah.
Well, you
We're
just gave
all-
me 2 reasons to watch Talking Tom. 1, because you're on the show, but 2, because of the work that I do playing music for children. Now I can be like, hey, guess what show I watch? Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And I can
Please,
just
yeah,
rub
do
it
it.
in their
And we-
faces.
Yeah.
And
I do really like working with the kids. I just want to throw that out there. I know that I have a lot of a salty exterior, but it's all in good fun.
No, it's the best. It's absolutely the best. And we wrote a lot of music on Talking Tom too. Lisa Schwartz, who plays Angela, did a lot of music like videos on YouTube, and so we always tried to make her sing whenever we could. And so we had a lot of fun writing songs that kids would enjoy. So if you keep watching, I'm sure you'll encounter one of those along the way.
I may need to, depending on what the kids throw at me. So
Yeah.
keep that in mind for my back pocket. Be like, hey, guess what? You know this song? And they'll be like, he knows.
Did you write the song in Minor Problems, the Clash of Clans episode, or did someone else write that song?
Oh God, you're gonna have to refresh my memory. Was it
It's like it was cute. It was cute.
That sounds-
That's my song.
that
And it was
sounds-
kind of like an airy indie kind of a song.
that sound?
I'm sorry.
I sound like such a dick, and I can't remember because of all
I've written
the
so many
things
songs.
I've
I'm
written.
Roald fucking Dahl.
but,
I'm J.R.R. Tolkien over here. I write
Minor
songs like it ain't nothing.
Minor Problems was one of the episodes that was a variety. Early on in Clash, it was kind of a variety show, and like it would be like 3 sketches. And I'm pretty sure the minor one was my episode, but I can't remember if the song was in the minor segment or if it was in a different
I
segment.
think it was during the giant destroying everything and turning very, very tiny. And learning all that
Oh
stuff.
no, that was Jamie. That was Jamie. You should give him a digital high five for that one. He wrote that one. Yeah. See, I couldn't claim that.
I met Jamie a few times. He's a lot.
Yes.
He's a great
I could have claimed that. I could have either said, yeah, I wrote that, but that's not going to get you anywhere. It's really not.
You are. That would really fuck up everything you just said.
Exactly.
Everything you just said for the last 5 minutes out the door because I'm going to take it for that song.
Exactly. So I'll end this conversation saying I wrote Jurassic Park, and I'm very proud of it. I wrote it when I was
And
6.
we love you for it. We love you for it.
Yeah.
Very talented. Jake, what have you been watching?
Oh man, last night I had a weird night, guys. I had a weird night.
Oh no.
I started it with season 2 of I Think You Should Leave, the Tim
I'm
Robinson
trying to watch
show.
that.
Meant to watch 1 episode, watch the whole thing. Was a bit talking. And then after that, I finally watched Enter the Void. Gasper knows Enter the Void.
Haven't
Do
seen
you
it.
guys know anything about this movie?
No.
I've heard
Jake,
people
tell me.
talking about it, but I have not seen it.
It
What
is
is-
a barrage. It's a barrage. It's from 2009. It is not for everybody. I don't need to talk too long about it. It's a very it's experimental, experiential, is what I'd
Okay.
say. It is very, very graphic. and it's 2.5 hours of like strobing. It's just strobes. Strobe lights.
Wow.
It's set in Japan. And the director, who I'm not crazy about the director anyway, but he described it as a psychedelic melodrama, and it's basically a movie told from the first person, but it actually succeeds. And it's a guy who's tripping and then gets killed, and so the whole movie is his journey through the afterlife as he's tripping and dying.
Wow.
It's a head trip. And I suggest it, but also don't suggest it. It's one of those where I'm like, I think most people are not going to enjoy this movie, but I enjoyed it.
I'd be curious because that sounds like it's touching on something thematically with one of the things I'm working on. So I might watch it to be inspired. I would love to know what you think, just because it's like, it's heavy. I think melodrama is really important because like that's the plot that it kind of follows. But like, I watched on my little screen right here last night, and I think there was a couple of times where if I watched this in the theater, I would vomit all over the place and be done with it. And there's a lot of reviews that I read like on Wikipedia where they're like, this is just pedantic and tedious and painful. And I'm like, I don't know, I think it's kind of cool. But also it definitely has that kind of like melodrama corn. Like it's so like a lot of crying and screaming. And again, it's like unbelievably graphic. So it really checks all my boxes, boys. All right.
I do suggest it for those who want to watch something that's just different. It's just
I'll give it a whirl.
Seems like a rainy day watch.
I'll take a walk on the wild side.
Yeah, not not a first date movie. You know, like you know that scene in Taxi Driver where he takes her to the theater, Sybil Shepherd to the theater. It's like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Make it watch on your own first, and then see if you want to bring your date. But I'm sure there's plenty of people across the board who will just enjoy the film. It's unique. I love me something unique. Something unique. But it is interesting. Going back to the Tim Robinson thing, and we'll wrap this up real soon. But I did learn. It's funny what you were talking about, like writing these sketches and load bearing and telling a story, because I learned watching Tim Robinson show that like, oh, you can just end a sketch whenever you want.
Yes, something
no
Saturday
ending.
Night Live kind of forgets.
But it takes that thing of Saturday Night Live of like, we don't have an ending, so we're just going to keep this going for 8 minutes until it kind of like fizzles out and there's a commercial where they're like, no, we're going to end this at the funniest joke. There just isn't an ending. There's just no conclusion or ending to this. And I was just dying. I can't suggest that show.
It's a great lesson to learn. And it's something I think, you mentioned Saturday Night Live. They don't really have the luxury of being able to do because they kind of have to just hit these marks. So, but
at this point, they're too big to fail.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and Tim Robinson used to write for SNL. And so a lot of these sketches are like failed sketches on SNL, but because they did it in this new way, or because they were able to cut it off where they wanted to cut it off.
It works.
Yeah. I suggest it.
I used to love that. I used to love
it. Sounds better than Enter the Void.
Shut the lights off in the middle of a joke. It was great.
It's a good move. It's definitely a good move. It's funnier than Enter the Void, Jack. Well, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, Matt Gossen, thank you so much for coming.
No, this was a blast. I had so much fun.
I can't wait for you to come back and tell us all about these crazy illegal things that you cannot talk about, right?
Yes. Deal. It's a promise.
It's illegal for you to speak.
So illegal.
It's a promise. And please share the analytics of this episode with me so I can know when next time to really punch up my
Everyone turned it off at minute 3 because we did not throw a newspaper. We were not on skateboards and our helmets were not on fire.
Film Stuffs Live.
A callback.
Take notes.
Like Netflix. We don't share our numbers. We got this close to our heart. I'll share it with you, I promise. Thank you again, Jack. Thank you for everything, as you always do. I feel like I might be glitching out right now. So
a little bit,
ever so slightly, but you look great.
I love you guys very much. I want to thank everybody for watching. Jack, any last words, Jack?
Only because you were glitching out before. I didn't hear if you said this, but did you say who the guest is next week?
Oh, see, that's why you produce the show. Next week we have Nate Waters and K.R. Brooks from Into the Void Films, and also they have a cool horror podcast called Those Who Remain that I was on. Talking about Hereditary. I talked about Hereditary for a very long time on that podcast. So definitely I'm excited. We're going to show some short films that they've made. They're fun horror group out of Chicago. And
Great.
very, very good friends.
Looking forward to that.
I got that's lovely. I saw the comment. That's very sweet. It's good to see you. I mean, I can't see you, but it's good to be seen.
All right. I appreciate you guys so much. I'm very excited to have you back on. I'm excited, Jack.
Absolutely.
I'll see you real soon. And everybody out there, I will see you in the future.
What's that billowing down the stairs? Look, I'm really starting to worry. There's half-eaten cupcakes everywhere. We're all out of paper clips. And the curtains smell like dupe. What? No. What? No. What? Well, that's where I used to grow my weed. But that's a story for another day. Never mind. We drove around until 3 a.m. looking for another all-you-can-eat fish restaurant.
And when you couldn't find one?
We went fishing. Yes, I have something that I'd like to sell.
Please tell me it's your hair.
No.